Aiden left the house, knowing today was an important day for him. He had been working at a construction company for 2 years, and today felt like an exam interview. Management from the capital was coming to bid farewell to the old branch director and appoint a new one. There were 3 candidates for the position, and everyone prepared carefully. Each candidate was required to provide a development plan for the company. Eli had been working on his plan for almost a month, and he felt confident that his work was the best. He loved his job and had developed a passion for reading from a young age. It was during those formative years that he decided to become a builder, promising himself that he would build conscientiously, unlike those who constructed new houses in his neighborhood. Eli and his friends often played at the construction site. One day, while playing, a slab wobbled under Aiden's feet. He shouted, trying to warn his friends to hold on, but he couldn't find anything to grab onto. He fell from a height of about 4 meters, landing on a pile of gravel and large pieces of concrete. Surprisingly, he didn't lose consciousness at first and didn't feel immediate pain. But then fear gripped him, and he tried to stand up. It was at that moment that a sharp pain shot through his body. The next 6 months were spent in the hospital, undergoing 3 surgeries. Eli could hardly comprehend what was happening around him. Every day, he begged his mother to take him home. "Mom, please, I can't take it anymore. Take me home." All she could do was cry and kiss him. Occasionally, his dad would visit, sitting by his son's bedside, holding his hand in silence. After 6 months, the doctors finally allowed him to go home for 3 months, but only temporarily. Eli was old enough to understand that he was 10 years old at the time. One early morning, while his parents thought he was asleep, Eli overheard their conversation in the kitchen. He couldn't get up, but his mom always left the door open to hear if he called for her. "Why? What are we going to do?" "The operation is in a month, and we have no money," Clara said. "What do you suggest?" "Sell a kidney," his father replied jokingly. "Come on, find a buyer." "I'll sell it," she insisted. "Stop kidding around, Zach. We need to think of something." "We just have to postpone the operation," Clara proposed, her voice filled with desperation. "Are you crazy? Haven't you heard what the doctor said? Every month reduces the chances." In the kitchen, a chair fell over, apparently because Dad jumped up in frustration. "I'm doing everything I can. We've already spent all the money. Everything. Do you understand? We even used the savings for his education and the repairs. Everything, you understand. And now you want something else from me?" Clara pleaded. "I'm not demanding anything, Zach. It just feels like you don't care. Do you realize our son might never walk again?" she continued. "I understand," he replied. "And what have you done to help him walk? Your salary at the nursing home is almost non-existent." "But Zach," the front door slammed loudly, signaling that Dad had already left. Aiden listened to his mother's footsteps as she approached the room. He tightly closed his eyes, hoping she would think he was asleep, so his tears wouldn't roll down his cheeks. Each day, the boy waited to be taken to the hospital. But as time passed, he realized that his parents hadn't found the money, and he would remain tied to his bed forever. He tried to distract himself by reading. He read so much that his eyes often grew tired and his head ached, but it helped him fall asleep quickly. And then came the moment that divided his life into 2 halves, before the betrayal and after. His beloved mother, the one he adored, simply left. One morning, she walked in wearing street clothes, set a small travel bag on the floor, and sat on the edge of his bed. "How are you, son?" she asked quietly. Aiden put the book aside, as he always did. "Where are you going, Mum?" he asked. "I need to leave. I came to say goodbye. I want you to know I love you more than anything in the world, more than my own life. Everything will be all right for you, I promise." She quickly kissed Aiden and rushed out the door. At first, he didn't understand that she was leaving for good, abandoning him. Fortunately, his father was there to support and calm him down. A month later, he managed to find the money for the operation, and Aiden was finally able to take his first steps. He decided then that he no longer had a mother. His father had become everything to him. After nearly a year of rehabilitation, Aiden was able to return to school. His father even arranged for him to take accelerated exams for the past year so that he could rejoin his class. One day, Aiden's father brought Sophie home. Although Aiden wasn't particularly fond of her, he was always polite. How could he be angry with his dad or issue him commands? 20 years passed. Aiden approached his car and paused for a moment. He had bought the car just 2 weeks ago, and he still wasn't tired of admiring it. When he got into the car, he noticed a young girl on the sidewalk staring at him intently. At first, Aiden thought she looked familiar, but as he studied her, he dismissed the idea. She was too unfashionable and poorly dressed to be someone he knew. As the car drove away, the girl pulled a photo from her pocket. It was a picture of Aiden when he was very young. She sighed with satisfaction, tucked the photo back in her pocket, and walked away. That evening, Aiden returned home in a great mood. Everything had gone as he had hoped. He was now the director of his branch. Few people achieved such a thing at only 30 years old. He unloaded his car, retrieving a cake and a bottle of champagne from the trunk. He had called his father earlier that day, telling him to set the table for a celebration. After saying this, he heard Sophie's displeased voice in the background. He could have invited us to a restaurant, but Aiden didn't let that ruin his mood. Sure, he could have taken them out to a restaurant, but he wanted to celebrate at home with his father, who had always been there and had done so much to help him stand on his own. Aiden turned around and was surprised to see the same girl from that morning standing in front of him, up close. She was beautiful, with striking blue eyes and a blonde ponytail. Perhaps they didn't know each other after all. He racked his brain for possible connections but came up empty. Eventually, he surrendered. "Yes. Do I know you?" he asked. "No, we don't know each other," she replied. "Thank God. But I need to talk to you," she continued. He raised an eyebrow, sensing her hostility. Damn, he thought. Maybe he had met her at Tom's country house. They had a great time that weekend, and honestly, Aiden didn't remember half of it. "Well, let's talk. I can spare you 5 minutes." "I don't need that much time." "Here." She handed him a note. "This is the address for your mother." "Is she seriously ill?" he asked, confusion evident on his face. "If you don't want to help her, at least come and visit. Maybe you won't have another chance to see her." Aiden pulled back the hand he had reached out for the note. "I don't have a mother." The girl looked at him intently. "You're wrong. You do have one, and no matter how hard you try to hide from it, she won't just disappear." "Okay, fine, but I don't want to see her." "Take the address and just think about it. Life isn't always what it seems," she said. With that, she handed him the note and quickly walked away. Aiden felt his evening was ruined, though he couldn't quite pinpoint why. He didn't share anything with his father. He probably just didn't want to spoil his mood. His dear father didn't deserve that. 2 days passed, and Aiden kept thinking about the note that lay in his pocket. On Saturday, after another restless night, he finally decided to visit and look into the eyes of the woman who had left him when he was sick. He searched for a long time, circling the suburban streets lined with old shacks, but couldn't locate the right house. Then he spotted her, the same girl. "Hey, what's your name?" he called out. She turned around in surprise, smiling. "Did you come after all? I just want to look her in the eyes. Can you show me how to find this damn house?" "Here it is, right behind you." Aiden turned around and realized he had missed the sign with the house number. Climbing the old, creaky stairs to the second floor, he reached for the doorbell but hesitated. "Mom!" He couldn't remember anything bad about her, except for the moment she left, crying by his bed while stroking his hand, pretending he was asleep. But now he had to pull himself together. This was the same woman who had left him scared of life's challenges. Dad had told him he tried to convince her to stay, promising to find the money. But Mom hadn't listened. Clearly, someone else had become more important to her than her own son. The doorbell rang loudly, startling him, and he noticed that the door was slightly ajar. He walked in and immediately heard a voice. "Maya, is that you?" It was his mother's voice, calling him to step forward. "No, it's not Maya," he replied. The woman lying on the couch groaned. "Son, call." "Yes, it's me." She tried to sit up, but couldn't manage it. Aiden stood in front of her, feeling frozen. He didn't want to help her. He didn't want to touch her. She seemed to sense this. "Son, sit down. There's a chair there," she instructed. He took a seat and looked around. The room seemed clean, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he was in some sort of homeless shelter. Outside, a woman was screaming loudly. His mother offered a faint smile. "That's just the neighbors making a fuss. It's not uncommon here. How are you doing, son?" Aiden smirked. "Don't you think it's a little late for those questions?" "I'm sorry," she said quietly, then fell silent. He could feel her scrutinizing him. Glancing over, he noticed a childhood photo on the table next to the sofa. What a hypocrite, he thought. Now he understood everything. It seemed her lover had abandoned her long ago. Somehow, she had discovered that everything was going well in her son's life and decided to try to extract money from him. Of course, that explained everything. "Why did you track me down? What do you want? Money? Don't bother putting on a show for me. Get up. Maybe you can at least make some tea." The mother attempted to rise again, managing to lower her legs to the floor but lacking the strength to go any further. "I'm sorry, son. I can't seem to get up," she admitted softly. Just then, the door slammed shut and Maya entered the room. She rushed to Aiden's mother. "Clara, have you lost your mind? You were absolutely forbidden to get up." The girl quickly put the woman back in her place, then turned to Aiden. "What are you looking at? Why did you let her? Come on, should I have put her to bed?" Aiden shot back. "I figured out your plan. You could have just asked for money without all this drama." "What?" Maya squinted at him. "Money? You'll never be able to pay your mother back for your life." "Enough, Maya." "No need," Clara sobbed uncontrollably. Maya stood there, arms crossed over her chest, continuing to press. "And it's so convenient to remain ignorant. You sleep better that way, right? Aiden, are you doing well? Okay, get out of here. Your mom has seen you." "And that's enough," Aiden replied tersely. Suddenly, a sigh escaped from the sofa. Maya turned sharply, rushing over to Clara, while Aiden fumbled with his phone, bewildered. So she really did call him to see how he was before she died, probably to ask for forgiveness. The ambulance arrived and took Clara away, and Aiden followed. He made sure his mother received all the necessary help, then asked the doctor, "When can I visit her?" "Tomorrow afternoon. Be sure to come. Things are not looking good," the doctor replied. Aiden left the hospital and immediately spotted Maya crying on a bench near the entrance. He walked over and sat beside her. "Why are you crying?" "The doctor said you can visit her tomorrow." She raised her tear-filled eyes and replied, "Really? I got so scared for her." "Yeah. Can I take you home?" "Thank you. If it's not too much trouble." Aiden pulled out of the hospital parking lot, deciding to return the next day to give his mother a chance to ask for forgiveness and to find peace for her soul. But if she thought there was any hope for a relationship, she was mistaken. As they drove through the now familiar neighborhood, Aiden felt a strange sense of surprise. He realized he lived in the same apartment building as Clara, just at a different entrance. "So, your neighbors?" he asked, unsure how to continue the conversation. The girl regarded him with a quizzical look, then nodded, prompting further questions. "So, are you planning to see your mom tomorrow?" "Yeah, I promised the doctor I'd stop by," Aiden replied, feeling a flicker of joy at her interest. She might dress modestly, but her figure and features were undeniably attractive. He found himself considering the possibility of an affair. "Sure, I'll come by later," he said. "I doubt you'll be there for long," she replied cryptically. "Why is that?" Aiden asked, his enthusiasm dampened. Maya had already stepped out of the car, but before shutting the door, she added, "Just so you don't cross paths with her." The door slammed shut, leaving Aiden staring after her, frustration building within him. Finally, he shook his head and slapped his palms against the steering wheel. "This is outrageous. Who does she think she is?" he muttered as he drove home, anger boiling in his chest. How could his mother do this? She had left him when he was a sick child, refusing to take on the burden of caring for him. Now, thanks to Maya, she was trying to lay a guilt trip on him. No way. They had the wrong person if they expected him to feel remorse. To hell with them all. The idea of visiting her at the hospital tomorrow was out of the question. They could sort out their own mess. He was so consumed with rage that he didn't notice the red traffic light until it was too late. The screech of brakes, a violent impact, and then darkness enveloped him. He couldn't wake up. Or rather, he wasn't asleep. He just couldn't seem to awaken. There was no pain, just a disorienting emptiness surrounding him. He could hear faint sounds, but he couldn't open his eyes. Footsteps approached, light and barely audible. "Hello? Oh, it's the little wicked one," he thought as Maya appeared. He made a monumental effort to open his eyes, and she was there one moment, then gone the next, replaced by the face of a doctor. "Hello, I'm Dr. Sullivan. What's your name?" "Aiden." "How old are you?" 30. "Great," Dr. Sullivan said, shining a flashlight into his eyes, prompting Aiden to instinctively squint and close them. "That's excellent. Now, try to rest." The doctor departed, and Maya soon returned. "I won't be long. Your family just left. Your stepmother is quite an unpleasant woman. How have you been living with her?" "She convinced everyone here to give her a document stating I won't be helpless after the accident. Your father tried to calm her down, but she screamed that she was filing for divorce. She said she wouldn't live under the same roof as your disabled son." "I'm not surprised. I'm starting to get used to it," Aiden replied dryly. "Get used to what?" "Well, it seems that whenever something goes wrong, the women in my life abandon me." "Are you talking about your mother?" Maya asked, her eyes flashing with concern. She paused before continuing. "You shouldn't speak like that." "Who am I supposed to talk to? I thought your head injury might have knocked some sense into you, but clearly it hasn't. Honestly, I expected more from you. I hoped you would at least try to uncover the truth and understand who was truly at fault." "You." Aiden started, but found himself at a loss for words. "Anyway, I hope you recover quickly." She turned to leave, and Aiden watched her, feeling a strange mix of emotions as he closed his eyes again. He had never anticipated that someone could upset him so deeply. Within 2 minutes, despite being filled with medications, he was filled with confusion. What's wrong with her? What is she talking about? What truth? What is it that I don't know that should change my view of the world? His head throbbed, and he wanted to uncover the terrible secrets Maya had mentioned. On the other hand, she could have simply told him everything herself instead of creating a whirlwind of confusion and then disappearing. Bad luck for her husband, if he existed. Later that evening, the doctor returned to check on him. "Well, what can I say? It's not as grim as it seems. You can sit up, but take your time." The blow to your forehead was significant, but fortunately, it held up well. Aiden sat up slowly, feeling a slight dizziness that was manageable. "Doctor, I need to know. There was a woman admitted here yesterday. I might not have seen her, but she could have a different last name. How can I find her?" The doctor slapped his forehead as if a light bulb had gone off. "Where do I know you from? You came in with her, didn't you?" "Yes, that was me," Aiden confirmed. "She's in the 7th ward. It's right across from here. I need to go there." "Absolutely not. You're not ready for long trips yet. Let's keep an eye on you for a day or two, and then you can go," the doctor insisted before leaving. Aiden waited for what felt like an eternity, and the hospital grew quiet. Slowly, he approached the door and peered out. The corridor was empty, but he could hear the cheerful chatter of nurses from their station. Taking advantage of the moment, Aiden crept along the wall toward the ward's door. He opened it cautiously and stepped into the hallway. After pausing briefly, he moved toward the opposite door. No one was there either. He had chosen the perfect time. The patients had been fed and settled, and now the staff was free to eat and rest. The 7th ward lay directly in front of him. He didn't have time to think. He pulled the door open. His eyes struggled to adjust to the semi-darkness, but when they did, he spotted his mother. "Aiden, what happened to you, son?" "It's nothing. I was in my head. Do you know why I came?" She shook her head, and he continued, "You need to tell me why you abandoned me. I thought I didn't care, but now I realize I want to know." I need to understand who you met that made you decide to leave your sick child behind. She fell silent for a moment, then finally responded, I didn't abandon you, Aiden. I just had no other choice. Please, he said. I remember you coming to say goodbye to me. No one forced you to leave the house. You made that decision yourself, didn't you? Right? Of course, it was my choice, Clara sighed. Aiden felt disappointment creeping in. Only now did he realize he had hoped that after hearing her side of the story, he might feel compelled to help her. He wanted to support her in her treatment, maybe even more. But how could he help someone who had treated him that way? Just tell me the reason, and I'll go, he said. I understand a sick child is a burden, but you didn't leave for nothing, did you? Okay, I'll tell you everything, but it's not a short story. I'm not rushing, Aiden replied, settling into the chair, ready to listen. Clara sighed and closed her eyes. Your surgery was postponed again and again, and I realized with each delay, the chances became smaller. There was no money at all. I tried to get a loan and even put the apartment up for collateral, but the amounts offered were not even half of what we needed. 3 months after you were discharged, I began to notice that your father smelled of another woman's perfume. There were traces of lipstick on his shirt. That's when I realized Zach wouldn't help us with anything. He distanced himself and had his own separate life away from us. I had to act quickly. Aiden looked at her in complete bewilderment. She was saying something strange. His father had always been around. He found that money. Aiden never asked where it came from, but he remembered well that after the surgery, they began living better. Dad opened his own small business. Yes, he was never home, but even though I wasn't yet an adult, I understood that he needed to work hard, Claire continued. Exhausted from running around to banks, I sat on a bench in the park and cried. Then someone called out to me. I looked up and saw my friend Sophie. Because of everything that had happened, I hadn't seen her in almost a year. She sat down, and we talked. She was outraged by Zach's behavior and his cheating. As we parted, she said, I'll think about it, and if I come up with something, I'll call you right away. I don't know if you'd call it luck, but literally 2 days later, her boss's daughter was involved in a hit and run. Her boss didn't seem upset. They had a good relationship. Her boss told her everything. Together, they came up with a solution. Sophie called me that night and said that her boss was willing to pay twice the amount needed for your operation. I had an hour to decide. Your father wasn't home. Sophie said that the remaining money could be spent on the best lawyer who could minimize my sentence. Yes, they offered me a way out. I could take the blame for the boss's daughter. I agreed, knowing that I wouldn't see you for a very long time. But at least you would be able to run like before. Your dad showed up the next morning, and I told him everything. He agreed with my decision and said he would do everything to get me the shortest possible sentence. He couldn't come to the trial because he was with you in the hospital. Sophie didn't come either, but I was confident that you were being helped and hoped for some leniency. However, I was sentenced to 9 years. I don't know why it was so long. Maybe they found something else? Or perhaps the person who died wasn't just an ordinary man. There was no reconsideration of the case, no lawyers, nothing. I couldn't tell the truth because it would only make things worse. The money was paid, and the operation was done for you. That boss kept her promise. I was released on parole after 7 years and went straight home. I really wanted to see you. But when I opened the door, it was Sophie who answered. It can't be, Aiden said, shocked. Unfortunately, yes. She insisted on leaving everything as it was. It was to her that your dad would run at night, she confessed. I don't blame him. Not everyone can handle what we went through. A puzzle was forming in Aiden's head. Money. A better life, Sophie. I left. Sophie explained that you hated me and that your father loved her. You had a family, and I was no longer needed. I rented this apartment. It wasn't expensive. I got a job at the factory. I often came to your house in your college, watching you from a distance. I cried and admired you. You grew up to be a handsome and intelligent man. I'm so proud of you. I would never have interfered with your relationship with Maya. I made the mistake of telling her everything, and she burned with indignation all this time. When I got sick, she decided to find you. I was against it. She's stubborn. Aiden sat quietly, digesting the information. Why didn't you come see me earlier? Why didn't you tell me? If I hadn't started listening, you would have received a letter, Clara said softly, her voice trailing off. Clara, he asked irritably. Silence again. Aiden rushed to the bed and saw his mother's hand hanging limply. Her cheeks were wet with tears, and her eyes were closed. Mom! He touched her, and for a moment, he feared the worst. Mom, please! He shook her gently, but she didn't respond. Panic flooded through him. Mom! Mom! Tears streamed down his face as he called out. Suddenly, someone pulled him away from the bed, and he felt a prick in his shoulder. Dad! He murmured, desperate to stay by her side. He woke up in his room, with his father sitting beside him. Aiden looked at him, confused about how they could still be living together. Why couldn't he let go of the hatred he felt? For so long, he had despised his mother, but now he found he needed to direct that anger toward his father. Dad! Zach stirred, opening his eyes. Son, Dad, is it all true? Everything my mother told me. Zach looked his son in the eye. Yes, Aiden, everything is true. I'm sorry it turned out this way. I understand if you don't want to see me. That's all right, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. I bought a ticket to my sister's. Her husband died, and it's been hard for her to manage alone with 2 kids. I'm going to live there. I've left everything for you. You'll find the documents at home. Sophie has moved on to someone luckier. Goodbye, son, and forgive me if you can. His father walked toward the door, seemingly waiting for a response. Aiden wanted to call out to him, but he held back. Son, why are you acting this way? You have a wedding today, and you're behaving like a little boy, Clara teased, smiling at her son as he fumbled with his tie, taking it off and trying a bow tie instead. She had returned from Germany 2 months ago, having undergone complex heart surgery. Aiden had sold his father's business to pay for her operation as soon as he found out it was possible. Clara had advised against it, but Aiden was insistent. Now, she looked almost unrecognizable, seeming to have dropped 20 years. Mom, how can you be so carefree? It's like you don't know Maya. She'll change her mind a dozen times and run off. Clara laughed, her joy brightening the room. She won't change her mind. She loves you. Really? Do you think so? Aiden asked, sitting next to his mother on the couch as she hugged him. Of course. I even think she fell in love with you at first sight. But don't let me interfere, or she might just take me with her. Both mother and son laughed, savoring the moment. Now that they were reunited, they could finally begin to make up for all the lost time.